The distress beacon had been screaming into the void for 3 days before anyone heard it. Owen Reed sat in the maintenance bay of the cargo hauler, elbow-deep in a malfunctioning air filter, when the ship's intercom crackled to life. Their navigator, a mantis-like creature named Skitter, announced they had picked up an emergency signal from Varro's 7. Owen knew that name. Everyone in the sector knew it. He dropped his tools and headed for the bridge, wiping grease on his pants. The crew had already gathered around the holographic display. Their captain, a reptilian named Salk with bronze scales and thoughtful yellow eyes, studied the flickering message with visible concern. "Research outpost on Varro's 7, Salk said without looking up. 12 scientists. Signal says life support failing." "That's a quarantine world," their communications officer said. She was a gaseous being named Wisp who floated in a containment suit, her voice synthesized through speakers. "The Galactic Council forbids landings there." Owen stepped closer to the display. The planet rotated slowly, its surface mostly green forests and blue oceans. It looked peaceful, beautiful even. Nothing about it screamed danger. "Why is it quarantined?" he asked. Skitter's compound eyes fixed on him. 3 species, apex predators. The Council calls them reavers, voidlings, and thornbacks. Every survey team sent to study them has died, torn apart. The last expedition lost 47 people in 2 hours. Owen felt a chill run down his spine. "And there's a research station there." Salk corrected. "The Council approved one final study 5 months ago. Long-range observation only. No contact with the creatures. Something must have gone wrong." The distress message played again, a woman's voice barely audible through static. "Anyone receiving this? Station compromised. Containment breach. Need immediate evacuation. They're everywhere." Then silence. Wisp drifted away from the console. "We should forward this to Council ships. They have military vessels that can handle rescue operations in hostile zones." "The nearest Council fleet is 6 days away," Salk said quietly. "Those people have maybe 12 hours of life support left." The bridge fell silent. Owen looked at each of his crewmates. They had been hauling cargo together for 2 years, boring work mostly. Food supplies, mining equipment, medical goods, nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. This was different. "I'll go," Owen said. Everyone turned to stare at him. "You're a maintenance tech," Skitter said, "not a soldier." "I know, but 12 people are dying down there. We can't just leave them." Owen looked at Salk. "We have environment suits, emergency weapons, a shuttle that can get in and out fast. We find the survivors, grab them, and leave before those creatures even know we're there." Salk's tail swished back and forth, a sign he was thinking hard. "The Council has classified those 3 species as extinction-level threats. They've considered burning the entire planet just to make sure they never leave it." "Then why haven't they?" "Because nobody understands them yet. They want to study them first, learn what makes them so dangerous." Salk looked at the planet again. "But every attempt to study them ends in death." Owen knew he should be scared. Part of him was. But another part, the part that had always loved animals back on Earth, felt something else. Curiosity. Those creatures had to have some reason for being so aggressive. Animals didn't just kill for no reason. "What do you think?" Salk asked the others. Wisp pulsed with uncertain colors. "It violates about 17 different regulations." "But it's the right thing to do," Skitter added, his mandibles clicking softly. "I vote we try." Salk nodded slowly. "Owen, you're sure about this?" "Yes." "Then we go, fast in, fast out. We land at the research station, find survivors, and leave. Nobody tries to be a hero. Nobody engages with the creatures if we can avoid it." Salk pointed at Owen. "And you stay close to me at all times, understood?" "Understood." The ship changed course, angling toward Varro's 7. Owen went back to the maintenance bay and gathered equipment. Environment suit, emergency beacon, a plasma cutter that could double as a weapon if needed. His hands shook slightly as he checked the power cells. 3 hours later, they entered orbit. The research station appeared on their sensors, a cluster of prefab buildings in a forest clearing. Scorch marks scarred the ground around it. Several structures had collapsed. "No life signs on surface scan," Wisp reported. "They might be underground." "Or dead," Skitter said. "We check anyway," Salk decided. The shuttle ride down was rough. Varos 7 had thick atmosphere and unexpected wind patterns. Owen gripped his seat as they descended through turbulent clouds. When they broke through, he saw the forest below, dense, dark green, ancient trees that stretched hundreds of feet into the sky. The shuttle landed beside the ruined station. Owen followed Salk and Skitter down the ramp, his boots crunching on scorched earth. The air smelled like smoke and something else, something wild. The main research building had been torn open. Metal walls peeled back like paper, equipment scattered everywhere, but no bodies, no blood. "Survivors might have retreated to the underground levels," Salk said, studying his scanner. "There's a bunker beneath the central structure. Owen, you and Skitter check it out. I'll secure the perimeter." Owen activated his helmet light and followed Skitter into the ruins. They found stairs leading down. Emergency lights flickered in the darkness below. Then they heard it. 3 different sounds echoing from the forest beyond the clearing. A howl that made Owen's bones vibrate, a shriek that seemed to bend reality itself, a bellow that shook the ground. Skitter froze. "They know we're here." Owen's heart hammered as the 3 distinct calls faded into the forest. Skitter's antennae twitched nervously, his natural instinct screaming at him to flee. But Salk's voice crackled through their helmet comms, steady and calm. "Keep moving, find those survivors, we don't have much time." The underground bunker was cold and dark. Owen's light cut through the gloom as they descended deeper. Water dripped somewhere in the distance. The walls were scratched, long gouges in the metal that looked like claw marks. "This doesn't make sense," Owen said, running his fingers over the damage. "If those creatures broke in here, where are the bodies?" "Maybe they dragged them away," Skitter suggested, though his voice sounded uncertain. They reached the bottom level. A heavy security door hung open, its locking mechanism destroyed from the inside. Owen stepped through and found himself in what looked like a research laboratory. Computer terminals lined the walls. Specimen containers sat empty on shelves, papers scattered across the floor. But still no people. Owen picked up one of the papers. It was a behavioral study report dated 3 weeks ago. He scanned the text, his eyes widening as he read. "Skitter, look at this." The mantis-like alien leaned over his shoulder. "What am I looking at?" They weren't studying the creatures to figure out how to kill them. They were studying their social behavior. "Listen to this." Owen read aloud. "Day 47, confirmed sighting of all 3 species in close proximity without aggression. Previously believed to be territorial rivals, but observed evidence suggests cooperative behavior. Need more data." Skitter's mandibles clicked rapidly. Cooperative, the Council said they were mindless killing machines. Maybe the Council was wrong. Owen moved to another terminal and activated it. The screen flickered to life, showing security camera footage. He scrolled through the files until he found recordings from 3 days ago. The footage showed researchers running through the station, but they weren't running from the creatures. They were running toward something outside the camera's view. Owen switched to an exterior camera and felt his stomach drop. A Council military shuttle sat in the clearing. Armed soldiers were attempting to capture one of the creatures, a massive wolf-like beast covered in crystalline spines. The Reaver, Owen realized. It was trying to protect something behind it. 2 smaller shapes, cubs. "They tried to take the young ones," Owen whispered. The footage showed what happened next. The Reaver fought desperately, but it was outnumbered. Then the other 2 species arrived. A 6-legged shadow creature that seemed to melt reality around it, the Voidling, and an armored reptilian beast covered in venomous quills, the Thornback. Together they drove the soldiers back. The researchers tried to intervene, shouting at the soldiers to stop. But in the chaos, the station's power core was damaged. Explosions tore through the buildings. The footage cut out. The researchers weren't killed by the creatures, Skitter said slowly. They were caught in the crossfire when the council tried to capture them. Owen felt anger rising in his chest. Where are the researchers now? A sound echoed from deeper in the bunker, a voice weak and desperate. Help, down here. Owen and Skitter rushed through another corridor. They found a sealed shelter room. The door was locked from the inside. Owen pounded on it. We're here to help, open up. Can't, the voice replied. Doors jammed, explosion damaged the mechanism. Stand back, Owen said. He pulled out his plasma cutter and began working on the hinges. It took 5 minutes of careful cutting, but finally the door came free. Skitter helped him pull it aside. 4 people stumbled out, 3 humans and 1 alien with blue skin. They looked exhausted, dehydrated, terrified. Thank the stars, one of them gasped. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes. I'm Dr. Lin. We've been trapped down here for 2 days. Where are the others? Owen asked. Lin's expression darkened. Dead. The soldiers killed 6 of them in the fighting. 2 more died when the power core exploded. We're all that's left. We saw the footage, Skitter said. The council soldiers tried to capture the creatures young. Those idiots, Lin spat. We were so close to a breakthrough. The 3 species aren't enemies. They're a symbiotic family unit. They raise their young together, hunt together, protect each other. We were documenting the first known case of 3 apex predators forming a cooperative pack bond. Owen helped her walk toward the stairs. Why would the council want to stop that research? Because it's dangerous to them, Lin explained. Think about it. 3 species that should be rivals choosing cooperation instead, choosing family across biological barriers. That kind of behavior can't be controlled, can't be exploited. The Council's whole economy depends on keeping species isolated and compliant. They climbed back to the surface. Salk was waiting by the shuttle, his weapon drawn and scanning the tree line. He relaxed slightly when he saw survivors. We need to leave now, he said. I've been hearing movement in the forest, big movement. As they helped the survivors into the shuttle, Owen glanced back at the ruined station. Something caught his eye. 3 pairs of eyes glowing in the shadows at the forest's edge, watching them. The Reaver, the Voidling, and the Thornback. They didn't attack, they just watched. Owen raised his hand slowly, a gesture of peace. The creatures didn't react, but they didn't flee either. Owen, let's go, Salk called. Owen climbed into the shuttle. As they lifted off, he looked down at the clearing. The 3 creatures emerged fully into the light, sitting side by side. Then 6 smaller shapes joined them. They're young. All of them watching the shuttle leave. Lin sat beside Owen, following his gaze. They're intelligent, she said softly. More than we realized. They understand we're not all enemies. Then why does the Council want them dead? Because if one human can. Look at 3 apex predators and see a family instead of monsters. What does that say about every other species the Council has labeled as too dangerous to exist? The shuttle climbed toward orbit. Owen couldn't stop thinking about those eyes in the darkness. The way the 3 creatures had stood together, protected their young together. They weren't monsters. They were parents, and the Council had tried to take their children. The cargo hauler had barely cleared Varro's 7 orbit when Dr. Lin collapsed. The other survivors rushed to help her, but she waved them off weakly. Just exhausted, she insisted. 2 days without food or water, I'll be fine. Owen helped her to the medical bay while Wisp tended to the other survivors. Salk piloted them away from the planet, setting course for the nearest station. But something nagged at Owen, a feeling he couldn't shake. We should go back, he said suddenly. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at him. Back, Salk's tail twitched with disbelief. To the death world we barely escaped from. Those creatures, Owen said. They let us go. They could have attacked while we were loading survivors, but they didn't. They just watched. Lin nodded from her medical bed. He's right. In all our research, the creatures only attacked when threatened. When the soldiers tried to take their young, they defended themselves, but they never hunted us, never stalked us. That doesn't mean they're friendly, Skitter argued. Maybe they were just cautious of the shuttle. Owen pulled up the security footage Lynn had copied to a data chip. He played it for the crew. They watched in silence as the scene unfolded, the soldiers attacking, the creatures defending, the researchers trying to stop the violence. The council lied, Wisp said, her gaseous form flickering with agitation. This isn't a quarantine world, it's a cover-up. Salk shut down the footage. His yellow eyes were troubled. If we report this, the council will bury it. They'll bury us too, probably. Claim we violated quarantine protocols. We'll lose our license, maybe end up in prison. And if we don't report it, Owen asked. Then 3 intelligent species stay on that planet, isolated and alone, until the council decides they're too much trouble and exterminates them. The ship fell quiet. Owen thought about those 6 pairs of young eyes watching from the safety of their parents. How long did they have? Months, years. He made a decision. Put me in a survival pod and launch me back to the surface. What? Salk turned his whole body to face Owen. Have you lost your mind? Maybe, but think about it. Dr. Lin's research proves those creatures can cooperate across species. If a human can make contact with them, peaceful contact, it changes everything. It proves the council is wrong. It proves you're insane, Skitter said. You'll be killed. Or I'll make history, Owen looked at Lynn. How did you communicate with them? She sat up straighter, wincing at the pain. We didn't, not directly. We observed from a distance. But we learned their body language, how they signaled danger, safety, playfulness. The Reavers used their crystalline spines, making them vibrate to create sounds. The Voidlings manipulate shadows to convey emotion. The Thornbacks have complex quill patterns that change color. Teach me. Owen, this is suicide, Salk said, but his tone had shifted, less certain now. Is it, or is it the first step toward understanding something the galaxy has feared for no good reason? Owen met his captain's eyes. Humans bonded with wolves thousands of years ago, creatures that could have killed us easily. We turned them into companions, partners, family. Maybe these creatures are the same. Dr. Lin smiled weakly. I'll teach you what I know, but I'm coming with you. You can barely stand, Owen protested. Then I'll sit. Those creatures trusted us enough to let us study them for 5 months. If there's a chance to continue that work, I'm taking it. The other 3 survivors exchanged glances. A young man with dark skin and nervous eyes spoke up. I'll go too. I'm Robert. I was studying the Voidlings before everything went wrong. If Owen's really doing this, he'll need all the help he can get. Salk's tail moved in slow, thoughtful patterns. Finally, he sighed. You're all insane, but maybe that's what this situation needs. He looked at Wisp and Skitter. Take us back to Vero 7, low orbit. We'll drop a long-range communication relay so they can stay in contact. What about the council? Wisp asked. Let them come. By the time they get here, maybe we'll have evidence even they can't ignore. The ship turned back toward the planet. Owen spent the next 2 hours learning everything Dr. Lin could teach him. How Reavers lower their spines to show. Submission, how Voidlings create bright shadows instead of dark ones when they're calm. How Thornbacks retract their quills completely when they feel safe. The most important thing, Lin said, is patience. Don't force interaction. Let them come to you. They landed in a different clearing, far from the ruined research station. Owen stepped out first, carrying nothing but a basic emergency pack. No weapons, no armor, just his environment suit and a communicator linked to the ship. Lin and Robert followed, setting up a small observation post at the shuttle's ramp. Salk kept the engines warm, ready to evacuate if things went wrong. Owen walked to the center of the clearing and sat down. Now what? Salk's voice came through his helmet speaker. Now we wait, Owen replied. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky. Strange birds called from the canopy above. Owen didn't move except to drink water and stretch his legs occasionally. He focused on staying calm, keeping his breathing steady. As evening approached, he heard movement in the trees. First came the reaver. It emerged from the shadows like a living weapon, crystalline spines glinting in the fading light. Each spine was the length of Owen's forearm, sharp enough to pierce steel. The creature was massive, easily weighing 500 pounds. Its eyes glowed amber in the twilight. It stopped 30 feet away and watched him. Owen didn't move, didn't speak, just sat and waited. The voidling came next, materializing from shadows that shouldn't exist in the open clearing. It moved like liquid darkness, 6 legs carrying it in an unsettling, smooth glide. Reality seemed to bend around it, creating afterimages that hurt to look at directly. It circled Owen at 20 feet, never taking its silver eyes off him. Finally, the thornback emerged, smaller than the other two but no less intimidating. Armored plates covered its body, each one bristling with venomous quills. It moved on 4 powerful legs, its tail leaving drag marks in the dirt. All 3 creatures surrounded Owen, forming a triangle with him at the center. "Owen," Salk's voice was tight with fear. "You need to leave now." "No," Owen said calmly. "They're not attacking, they're curious." He was right. None of the creatures showed aggression. Their body language, everything Lin had taught him, indicated wariness but not hostility. Owen slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a ration bar. He opened it carefully and took a bite. The creatures watched, fascinated. Then he did something that made everyone in the shuttle gasp. He broke the ration bar into 3 pieces and tossed them gently toward each creature. The reaver sniffed its piece. The voidling's shadows flickered around the offered food. The thornback's quills rippled with iridescent colors. None of them ate the rations, but none of them attacked either. Owen smiled. It was a start. Owen woke to something warm and furry pressed against his side. He opened his eyes slowly, careful not to make sudden movements. The reaver had curled up next to him during the night, its crystalline spines retracted and lying flat against its body. The creature's breathing was slow and steady, a deep rumble that vibrated through the ground. On his other side, the thornback had positioned itself like a living shield, its armored bulk between Owen and the forest. The voidling was nowhere to be seen, but Owen could feel it nearby, a presence in the shadows that bent light in impossible ways. 3 days had passed since he first sat in that clearing. 3 days of patience, observation, and tiny moments of trust building into something remarkable. "Owen, you should see this." Dr. Lin's voice came through his communicator. She had set up monitoring equipment around the clearing, recording everything. "What is it?" "The young ones are coming." Owen's heart rate spiked. The 3 parent creatures hadn't brought their offspring near him yet. This was a test, a crucial one. 6 small shapes emerged from the tree line. 2 reaver cubs with spines still soft and flexible. 2 voidling kits whose shadows were pale gray instead of black. 2 thornback hatchlings with quills that looked more like fur than weapons. They tumbled over each other in a playful pile, completely unconcerned with species differences. A reaver cub pounced on a voidling kit. A thornback hatchling climbed onto its packmate's back. They played like any young animals would, full of energy and curiosity. The adult reaver beside Owen raised its head and made a soft chirping sound. The cubs froze, looking toward their parent. Then slowly they approached Owen. "Don't move," Lin whispered through the comm. "Let them investigate." The first to reach him was a voidling kit. It sniffed his boot, its shadows flickering with rainbow colors, curious, not afraid. Then it did something that made Owen's breath catch. It climbed into his lap. The small creature weighed maybe 10 pounds. Its 6 legs scrambled for purchase on his legs, and it settled down with a contented purr that sounded like distant thunder. The other young ones, emboldened by their siblings' bravery, rushed forward. Within seconds, Owen was buried in alien children. They crawled over him, investigating his suit, his gloves, his helmet. One reaver cub tried to chew on his communicator. A thornback hatchling vibrated its soft quills against his arm, making a sound like wind chimes. Owen laughed. He couldn't help it. The sound made the adult creatures all lift their heads, alert. But when they saw their young ones safe and happy, they relaxed. The adult reaver stood and walked closer. It lowered its massive head and sniffed Owen's face through his helmet. Its breath fogged the visor. Then, very deliberately, it pressed its forehead against the clear panel. Owen understood what was being offered: trust. He raised his hand slowly and placed it flat against the outside of his helmet, matching where the reaver's head rested on the other side. They stayed like that for a long moment. Then the reaver pulled back and tilted its head to the side, exposing its neck. An incredibly vulnerable position for any predator. "He's showing submission," Robert's voice came through, awed. "He's acknowledging you as part of the pack." Owen carefully moved his hand to the creature's neck, behind the row of crystalline spines. The reaver's eyes closed. Owen began to rub gently, scratching the thick fur. The massive creature made a sound like a diesel engine purring. The voidling materialized fully from the shadows, its form becoming solid and real. It approached from the other side, moving with liquid grace. Unlike the reaver, it didn't lower its head. Instead, it sat beside Owen and simply leaned against him, a gesture of companionship rather than submission. Owen reached out with his other hand and gently touched the top of the voidling's head. The creature's shadows flared bright white, a sign of contentment that Lynn had taught him to recognize. The thornback was last. It waddled over on its short legs, quills completely retracted into its armored body. It didn't ask for affection like the others. Instead, it positioned itself at Owen's back and settled down, becoming a living backrest. Protection, the thornback was offering protection. Owen sat there, surrounded by 3 apex predators and their young, and felt something profound click into place. This was what the Council feared, not the creature's ability to kill, but their ability to connect, to form bonds that transcended biology, logic, and fear. "We're recording all of this," Lynn said. "Owen, this is incredible. You're making history." "No," Owen replied, rubbing the reaver's neck while a voidling kit chewed on his glove. "I'm just doing what humans have always done, making friends." The next 2 days passed in a blur of discovery. Owen learned that the reavers hunted in the morning, bringing back food for the whole family. The voidlings scouted ahead, using their shadow abilities to detect threats. The thornbacks built and maintained the den, using their venomous quills to mark territory and warn off other predators. It was a perfect symbiotic relationship. 3 species that should have competed for resources instead chose cooperation and became stronger together. On the 6th day, everything changed. Owen was playing with the young ones, tossing a stick for them to chase, when the adult creatures suddenly went rigid. All 3 of them turned toward the sky, spines raised, shadows darkening, quills extended. "Owen, we have a problem," Salk's voice cut through the peaceful moment. "Multiple ships just dropped out of hyperspace, Council vessels, military configuration." Owen's blood ran cold. "How many?" 12, they're hailing us now." The transmission came through on all channels. A stern voice, clipped and formal. "Unidentified cargo vessel, you are in violation of Galactic Council Quarantine Protocol 7. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Dr. Lin came running from the observation post. "They're here to finish what they started. They're going to kill the creatures." The young ones sensed the adults' fear and huddled together, making distressed sounds. The reaver positioned itself between the sky and its family, ready to die protecting them. The voidling's shadows began to spin violently. The thornback's quills dripped with venom. Owen stood up, his mind racing. 6 days ago, he had been a simple maintenance tech on a cargo hauler. Now he stood between 3 alien species and the most powerful military force in the galaxy. "Salk," he said, "remember what you said about making history." "Owen, don't. Get Dr. Lin and Robert back to the ship. Then broadcast everything we've recorded. Every moment of the last 6 days. Send it everywhere. Every news network, every social media platform, every communication hub in the galaxy." They'll shoot us down before it reaches anyone. Then make sure it reaches everyone first. Owen walked to the center of the clearing as the council ships descended through the clouds. Massive military cruisers, bristling with weapons. They could glass the entire forest from orbit if they wanted. But they wouldn't, not if the whole galaxy was watching. The three adult creatures moved to stand beside Owen. Not behind him, not in front of him, beside him. Equal partners facing a common threat. The young ones clustered around their legs, confused and frightened. Owen reached out and placed one hand on the Reaver's head, another on the Voidling's shoulder. The Thornback pressed against his back. The first council shuttle touched down. Soldiers in powered armor emerged, weapons raised. And Owen smiled, because somewhere above, his crew was broadcasting images across the stars. Images of a human standing peacefully among three of the most feared predators in the galaxy, protecting their children. Images that would change everything. The lead soldier was a Krell, a species known for their rigid adherence to protocol and their 4 arms that could each hold a weapon. He stepped forward, his helmet speakers amplifying his voice across the clearing. Step away from the hostile entities. You are in violation of council law. Owen didn't move. The 3 creatures pressed closer to him, protective of him in equal measure. The young ones huddled between their parents' legs, watching the soldiers with wide, frightened eyes. These aren't hostile entities, Owen called back. They're a family. They are designated extinction-level threats. Step aside, or you will be considered an accomplice to their aggression. What aggression? Look at them. They're not attacking, they're protecting their children. The Krell soldier's helmet tilted slightly, as if he was receiving new orders through his communication system. We have authorization to neutralize all specimens. Your presence complicates our mission, but it does not change our orders. Owen's heart pounded, but he kept his voice steady. Then you'll have to go through me. Above them, he could hear Salk's voice broadcasting over every available channel. This is civilian transport Meridian Dawn. We are transmitting live footage from Varos 7. The Council has lied about the creatures here. They are not monsters. Watch and see the truth. The Krell soldier raised one of his weapons. Final warning, step aside. Then something unexpected happened. More soldiers emerged from the other shuttles, but they didn't raise their weapons. Instead, they stopped at the edge of the clearing, watching. One of them, a human woman with gray hair and sergeant stripes, stepped forward and pushed down the Krell's weapon. Hold fire, she said. You don't have authority to. I have eyes, Lieutenant. Those creatures aren't attacking. That human is sitting there petting them like they're oversized dogs. She looked at Owen. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the dumbest. Maybe both, Owen admitted, but I'm not wrong about them. The sergeant walked closer slowly. Her weapon was holstered. The 3 creatures tensed but didn't move to attack. She stopped 10 feet away and crouched down, making herself less threatening. I'm Sergeant Hayes. I've been in the Council military for 20 years. I've seen a lot of dangerous things in that time. She looked at the Reaver, the Voidling, the Thornback. But I've never seen predators act like this. Never seen 3 different species raise their young together. That's because the Council exterminates any species that shows this kind of behavior. Dr. Lin's voice came through the broadcast. She had patched into the clearing speakers from the ship. We've found records going back 200 years, dozens of species labeled as threats and destroyed. The common factor, they all formed pack bonds across biological barriers. The sergeant's expression hardened. Why would the Council do that? Control, Owen said. Species that form strong social bonds resist exploitation. They unionize. They demand rights. They can't be worked as easily or manipulated as effectively. Isolated species are easier to control. More soldiers were lowering their weapons now. Owen could see doubt spreading through their ranks. These weren't evil people. They were following orders they believed were protecting the galaxy. The Krell lieutenant wasn't convinced. This is seditious talk. We have our orders from high command. High Command isn't here, Hayes said. We are, and I'm not killing a family. Because some bureaucrat labeled them dangerous. She looked at Owen. Can I approach? Owen glanced at the Reaver. Its amber eyes studied the sergeant carefully. Then slowly it lowered its spines, a gesture of acceptance. Yes, Owen said. Move slowly. Hayes walked forward with her hands visible and empty. When she reached Owen, she knelt down beside him. The young ones watched her with curiosity. One brave voidling kit crept forward and sniffed her boot. She smiled. They're just babies. Babies that will grow up to be apex predators, Owen agreed. But that doesn't make them monsters. Humans lived alongside wolves and bears and lions. We learned to coexist. Sometimes we even partnered with them. Hayes reached out slowly and touched the voidling kit's head. It purred, the sound resonating through the air. I had a dog when I was a kid. He was part wolf. Everyone said he'd be dangerous, that wolves couldn't be trusted. But he was the gentlest creature I ever knew, saved my life once when I fell through ice. She looked up at the adult voidling. It watched her with those strange silver eyes, shadows flickering around its form. You're not so different, are you? The broadcast was reaching across the galaxy now. On 1,000 worlds, billions of beings watched as a human and a council soldier sat among the forbidden creatures. Watched as they played with the young ones. Watched as the adults allowed this interaction, trusting these strangers with their most precious treasures. Then the communication channels lit up. Messages poured in from every corner of known space. Scientists sharing suppressed research. Civilians reporting strange orders to avoid certain species. Soldiers confessing to missions that never made sense. And videos, dozens of them. Other species showing pack-bonding behavior with creatures the Council had labeled dangerous. A reptilian child playing with a massive insect on a quarantined world. An avian elder grooming a creature covered in venomous spines. A gaseous being teaching a young predator to hunt without killing unnecessarily. The pattern was undeniable. The Council had been systematically destroying species that threatened their economic model. On the flagship orbiting Varos 7, High Commander Prex watched the broadcasts with growing horror. He was a bird-like species, elegant and refined, who had built his career on maintaining order, on protecting the galaxy from threats. But now he saw something different. He saw fear, not the creature's fear, but his own. Fear that the old ways of control were ending, fear that cooperation might replace domination. His communication officer, a young human named David, turned to him. Sir, we're receiving over 10 billion messages demanding we stand down. Every major news network is covering this. If we attack now, it will be the end of the Council as we know it, Prex finished. He closed his eyes. Signal all ships, weapons hold, no one fires unless fired upon. In the clearing below, Owen felt the tension ease as the ship's weapons powered down. Hayes stood up and faced the other soldiers. New orders, she announced. Establish a perimeter, protect this clearing. No one approaches without permission from the creature's guardian. She looked at Owen. That would be you, I guess. Owen stood up, a Reaver cub clinging to his leg, a thornback hatchling perched on his shoulder, and a voidling kit wrapped around his arm. I'm not their guardian, I'm their friend. The adult Reaver stepped forward and pressed its head against Owen's chest. The voidling's shadows wrapped around him like a gentle embrace. The thornback vibrated its quills, creating a sound like wind chimes that spoke of trust and acceptance. And Owen, surrounded by creatures that could tear him apart in seconds, felt safer than he had ever felt in his life. Because he wasn't alone. None of them were. Not anymore. High above, the Council fleet held position. Below, soldiers who had come to destroy now stood guard to protect. And across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and wondered what other lies they had been told. What other friendships had been forbidden? What other families had been torn apart in the name of order? The broadcast continued. Owen sat back down with his impossible family and waited to see what would happen next. He didn't have to wait long. 3 months later, Owen stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, and he was not alone. The Reaver walked on his right, its crystalline spines polished until they gleamed like diamonds. On his left, the Voidling moved with its characteristic fluid grace, shadows controlled and gentle. Behind him, the Thornback carried itself with quiet dignity, quills retracted but ready. The gallery above was packed with representatives from 400 worlds, every major news. Network had cameras focused on the floor. What happened here today would reshape galactic politics for generations. High Commander Prex stood at the speaker's podium, his feathers ruffled with agitation. This is unprecedented. Animals do not address the council. Owen stepped forward. They're not animals, they're people. Different from us, yes, but deserving of the same rights and respect we give to any sentient species. They don't speak, they don't build cities or ships, they live in forests like primitives. So did humans once, Owen replied. We lived in caves and hunted with stone tools. Does that mean we weren't people then? He gestured to his companions. These three species have developed a cooperative social structure more sophisticated than most civilizations. They've created a family unit that crosses biological boundaries. They communicate, they plan, they protect each other. They're not mindless predators. They're choosing a different way to live. A representative from the insected hive worlds clicked forward. We have reviewed Dr. Lin's research. The evidence is compelling, but it raises disturbing questions about council policy. Questions we need answers to, Owen agreed. He activated a holographic display. Lists of species scrolled past, all marked with council designation codes. These are the species destroyed under quarantine protocols over the last 200 years, 47 in total. We've been investigating each case. Dr. Lin appeared on a secondary screen, broadcasting from Vero 7, where she continued her research. Every single one showed evidence of pack bonding behavior across species lines. Every single one was labeled dangerous without proper investigation. The Council didn't exterminate them because they were threats. The Council exterminated them because they represented a different model of civilization. The assembly hall erupted in argument. Representatives shouted across the floor. Some defended the Council's actions. Others demanded investigations. A few called for Prex's immediate removal. The Reaver growled, a low rumble that somehow cut through the noise. The hall fell silent. All eyes turned to the massive creature standing beside Owen. It stepped forward and did something remarkable. The Reaver's spines began to vibrate, creating a complex harmonic sound. The Voidling's shadows formed shapes in the air, images of memories. The Thornback's quills shifted through a spectrum of colors. They were speaking, not in words but in a language uniquely their own. What are they saying? Prex demanded. Owen listened, his months of study allowing him to understand fragments of the communication. They're asking why we fear cooperation, why we punish strength found in unity instead of celebrating it. The images the Voidling created showed scenes from their history. The three species meeting for the first time, the initial conflict, then the discovery that their young ones didn't fight, didn't see each other as enemies, and how the adults learned from their children. They're telling us their story, Owen continued, how they chose to raise their families together because it made everyone safer and stronger, how they discovered that differences weren't weaknesses but sources of new abilities. He paused, watching the images shift. They're asking us what we're so afraid of. Sergeant Hayes stood from the military section of the gallery. I can answer that. The Council is afraid of losing control. I've served for 20 years and I've seen how the system works. Keep species isolated. Keep them competing. Keep them too busy surviving to question authority. More soldiers stood with her, dozens of them from a dozen different species. But these creatures showed us something different. Hayes continued. They showed us that cooperation is possible, that families can be built across any divide, and if that's true, then maybe we don't need the Council telling us who to fear. Prex's feathers flattened against his body. This is sedition. The Council maintains order. Without us, there would be chaos. Without you, there would be freedom, Owen said quietly. Freedom to choose our own friends, our own families, our own futures. The young ones had been waiting in a secure room, but now they bounded onto the assembly floor, escorted by Robert and 24 scientists who had joined Dr. Lin's research. The Reaver cubs, voidling kits, and thornback hatchlings tumbled over each other in their excitement, completely unconcerned with the hundreds of alien beings watching them. One voidling kit ran straight to a nervous delegate from the fungal collective and climbed up his robe. The delegate froze in terror. The kit purred and settled on his shoulder like it belonged there. The chamber watched in stunned silence as the young ones explored, greeting representatives with curiosity instead of fear. A Reaver cub tried to chew on a holographic projector. A thornback hatchling vibrated its quills in harmony with the chamber's acoustic system. They were just children, playful, innocent, and unafraid. "These are the monsters you wanted to exterminate," Owen said. "These are the threats that required military intervention. Look at them and tell me honestly that destruction was the only option." Prex opened his beak to respond, but no words came out, because he was looking at a Reaver cub that had approached his podium and was now sitting at his feet, staring up at him with enormous amber eyes. The High Commander, who had authorized the deaths of 47 species, reached down with a trembling wing and touched the cub's head. It purred. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, the Council passed the Varro's Accord by a margin of 73%. All quarantine protocols would be reviewed. Species labeled as threats would be studied properly before any action was taken. And most importantly, pack bonding behavior would be recognized as a sign of intelligence, not danger. Prex resigned his position that evening. In his final statement, he admitted to letting fear drive policy instead of compassion. "I thought I was protecting the galaxy," he said, "but I was only protecting my own vision of how things should be. That was wrong." Owen returned to Varro's 7 with his extended family. The planet had been declared a sanctuary world, protected from development or exploitation. Scientists from 100 species had requested permission to study there, to learn from the unique family structure the 3 species had created. Salk and the crew of the Meridian Dawn had been offered positions as official liaisons. They accepted, though they still kept their cargo hauling business running on the side. Some things didn't need to change. 6 months after the Council vote, Owen sat in the same clearing where this had all begun. The Reaver dozed in the sun, its spines creating a musical sound as the wind passed through them. The voidling played with its kits, teaching them how to create bright shadows instead of dark ones. The thornback worked on expanding the den, using its quills to mark territory and warn off the occasional curious predator. Dr. Lin sat beside Owen, reviewing research notes. "We've identified 12 more worlds with similar species. The Council has agreed to lift quarantine protocols and allow proper study." "How many do you think we can save?" Owen asked. "All of them if we work together," she smiled. "That seems to be the lesson here, doesn't it? We're stronger together." A message chimed on Owen's communicator. It was from Hayes. She had left the Council military and was now leading an independent task force investigating historical quarantine cases. Her team had found evidence of 3 species that might still have surviving populations. Owen read the message and felt hope swell in his chest. 3 more species that might get a second chance. 3 more families that might be preserved. The Reaver raised its head and looked at him. Without words, Owen understood the question. "Are you leaving?" "Not permanently," Owen said aloud. "But there are others out there who need help, others who have been misunderstood and feared. I need to go find them." The Reaver stood and walked over. It pressed its forehead against Owen's chest, a gesture they had shared 1,000 times. The voidling materialized from the shadows and leaned against his side. The thornback waddled over and settled at his back. They understood and they approved. Because that's what family did. They supported each other. They helped each other grow. And sometimes they let each other go, knowing the bond would remain no matter the distance. Owen rubbed the reaver's head, feeling the rumble of contentment vibrate through his hand. He touched the voidling's shoulder, watching its shadows bloom with bright colors. He leaned back against the thornback's solid presence. "I'll come back," he promised. "Always." 3 months later, Owen stood on another world, facing another species that the Council had labeled dangerous. This one resembled a massive spider, with compound eyes that reflected starlight and legs that could move faster than most species could see. It had killed 3 survey teams. It had destroyed 2 research stations. The Council wanted it exterminated. But Owen saw something different. He saw a creature defending its territory, protecting something precious. He walked into the cave system alone, unarmed, and sat down in the darkness. And he waited. Hours passed, then days. On the 4th day, the creature emerged from the deepest shadows. It approached slowly, carefully, its many legs moving in perfect coordination. It stopped 5 feet away and watched him. Owen smiled. "Hello," he said softly. "I'm here to be your friend." The creature tilted its massive head, considering. Then very slowly it moved closer. And somewhere on Varro's 7, 3 apex predators felt their family grow a little larger, even across the vast distance of space. Because that's what humans did best. They made friends with monsters. And in doing so, proved the monsters were never monsters at all.